Welcome to the 5-Year You podcast, a show dedicated to helping you become the best version of yourself one day at a time. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kat, and we promise to keep it raw, real, and relatable.
Are you ready to grow?
Hi, welcome back, Five Tribe. Today's episode is all about the self. It's our second of 5 coaching calls. If you missed last week's, go back and check it out. It's all about our soul, discovering your purpose. But this week's, we get really into who you want to be, and it's all about focusing on the self and the different aspects of that. How are you doing today, Kat?
I'm doing great. I think it's important if you are just finding our podcast, you're just tuning in right this second to actually go back and listen to the episode right before this one, because we're departing a little bit from our usual podcast because we wanted to show what our framework is, which is 5 weeks of coaching, taking people, their soul all the way through the different parts of our coaching where we help people become their best selves in 5 years, discover their purpose, and really create the life that they have always wanted. So the episode right before this one is a sample of what you would experience with us in the first week of coaching. And so today is an example of what you would get with us next week after that.
That's right. And we love doing this. Out of all the layers that we talk about, I know discovering your soul's great, but to me, this is the one where you get to come alive. We get to focus on you and how you want to show up and what's important to you. So the self layer, there's 4 aspects of it. There's mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And we're going to go into each of these throughout the show. So ladies first, which one would you like to pick?
Well, I'll go first, and I'll pick emotional just because it's the first one you said. And as a reminder, if you tuned in last week, or if you're, just coming to us, what we're doing is we're helping people rebuild their lives from the inside out. So rather than basing your days, your time, your decisions on what other people want, what society wants, what your parents expect of you, we are refocusing all of your energy and attention back to yourself. Now, some might make you feel like this is a selfish act, but instead we want you to think of this as a courageous act. So many of us have gotten so far away from taking care of ourselves and doing what we want to do that we actually forgot the kind of things that we like, the things that make us happy. And so last week we went through and we talked about soul and who we really are. And so now we're talking about self, which seems similar, but now we're sort of getting to who you are, how you show up in the world. And you want to show up as an authentic version of yourself. And your emotions, the emotional part of yourself, is really important. And I think Andrew always says emotion is energy in motion, right? And so your emotions are the way that you reflect who you are to the rest of the world.
Yeah, they're your driving force, right? I mean, if you have, we'll say, a positive grasp on your emotions, meaning you accept them and you know how you want to feel on a day-to-day basis, and you know how to shift in and out of maybe some lower vibrational, emotions, like we talk about anger, sadness, stuff like that. The more you have mastery over those emotions, the better you can show up in your life, in your day-to-day situations. And it's just, for me, the emotional aspect, when I was doing my 5-year self, I just wanted to be the master. And that began with awareness of my emotions. And I've told my story before, but I really haven't been aware of my emotions my whole life. I had kind of been stuck in a good or bad type of, on or off switch. And Catherine, you're the first one who kind of came along and said, well, it's actually a dimmer switch right above that on off switch. And you can just slide through these things. And so for me, when we were exploring my emotional self, what really came up is like, I really want to wake up feeling energized and positive and all these kind of, really good feelings throughout my day. I wanted to be able to bring awareness to those moments when I was going, I'm not loving this moment right now, and know that I want to shift out of the emotional state and have that awareness and the abilities to do it. So that was really my goal for my emotional awareness and how I wanted it to be for myself.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And for you always say that about yourself, that you didn't even know your emotions, or you didn't know that you could feel two things at once. And these are a lot of things that you've said in previous episodes. And for me, I feel like it was the reverse. I feel like I'm like, had so many emotions, so many feelings, such hyper awareness, not only of my emotions, how other people feel as an empath. And you're very empathetic as well. And I feel like you've tuned into that even more over the last few years. But the challenge with that is that for someone who is a deeply feeling person like I am, sometimes it is hard to cope in the day-to-day normal lives of everyone else, right? And so something that I had to learn is boundaries and the coping skills when the big emotions come up. And this, of course, has helped me as a mom as well, because when my kids have big emotions, now I can help them cope with them, right? And so a big part of me going through this process and going through this coaching process with Andrew and addressing the emotional parts of me has been learning to accept and appreciate how I am, saying like, wow, I'm really lucky that I have all these emotions. I'm really lucky that I get to feel so many things and empathize with people. For so long, I viewed it as a weakness, and now I view it as strength. And so in coaching, we can help you think similarly, kind of reframe how you feel about your emotions.
Yeah. And I think what you and I have done for ourselves, obviously, but for other people is we've given us space to discuss emotions. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a safe space, but I think for a lot of people, discussing your emotions with the people you're emotional about might not be the easiest thing. So it's nice to kind of get outside of your normal situation and go, okay, how do you normally feel? And we have this sheet that we do inside of the program where you look at the emotions that you're normally feeling, the ones that you are okay with, the ones you'd like to see less of. And we have a talk around emotions, because I think a lot of times we go, well, I just want to feel happy every day. And that's not realistic, but you can include more happiness and more of your day can be shifted towards that. But it's not about muting anything, below zero as far as we call negative emotions, which we know there aren't. But, it's looking at things and being able to say, I tend to get really frustrated around 3 p.m. because I don't have the energy and I want to change that. Okay, great. So we have those conversations about, right, 3 p.m. frustration, the frustration kicks in, and we talk about how we can help our clients resolve those things in a way that makes sense to them. Because what makes sense to me and you isn't always going to make sense to that third person, but we've gone through enough experiences and helped other people and seen things happen that we know it is possible to shift. And that's why we always say we take it one step at a time. And, that's a really big thing for us to just include the wide range of emotions that is the human
Yeah,
experience.
I love that. Well, what about the next one, spiritual? Maybe explain why we included that as part of the self, as something that we wanted people to think about, regardless of like how they grew up or what their current practices are. Like, why did we put that in self?
We put it in self because spirituality is a very personal thing.
Mm.
And I am open to all types of spirituality and the absence of it, if that's what it is. I think that to have a very strong sense of self, you need to know what you believe in spiritually. And sometimes it's really hard to articulate that. But I think a lot of times nobody's given us permission to think outside of whatever we were raised with. That was my case. And I'm not going to speak to anybody else's, but I know for myself, it was what I was taught just isn't resonating with me the way it didn't click. It did when I was young and didn't wasn't able to tie the dots together. And now I am really able to look at it and go, oh, I see. I was being taught this one aspect, but in fact, I believe in this much bigger view of things.
Yeah.
And that's so that we've included spirituality because it's necessary, whether that is, I just believe in God and that's it, and I don't think about it. Or
Yeah.
I want to know the subtle energies of the universe and how they work with each other, and the tides and the moons, the suns, stars, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to know what that is for you and be able to articulate it so that you have something to have a foundation on to turn to when times are tough.
Yeah, I love that we included this, and the importance of it is we teach that authenticity is the path to happiness, and by including it here and by taking people through the practice of asking themselves, what do I really want? Who am I? What choices do I want to make? This question really gets at, what do I believe? And there's no wrong answers. It's a question created inside of our coaching container to give you the opportunity and the time to really think about whether you agree with the religious practices or lack thereof that you were raised with, whether you want to explore something different, whether you want the courage to say, I don't believe in anything at all, or whatever it is, that we're inside of a hologram. I mean, whatever it is, we support you. But studies have shown that people actually have a more satisfactory life if they believe in something beyond themselves. Oh, the study didn't show, if they believed in the 10 Commandments and this very rigid thing. It's just if you feel like there's a sense of something that's bigger than you in this world. And so that's why we included the spiritual part. So I think it's fun. I think it's an interesting discussion, and this is a judgment-free place to explore those ideas.
Absolutely. It's such a unique question for each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And I think much like a lot of things we're raised with, we never give ourselves permission to think differently about it. It really is fascinating when you can kind of take that step outside and go, does this feel right for me? Is this really what I'm about? Or can I choose differently? And, I've chosen differently. I know you have made other choices as well, just to kind of be open to different things. And I have, as they say, I got no dog in this fight, but
Do
I
they
I
say
do
that, Andrew? Does someone actually say that? Because
I no, probably not.
just
Thanks for calling
checking.
me out on that on the air. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I think, I think there's some people too that go, well, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in anything. Then you can just believe in that future version of yourself, that 5-year you. That is a belief in
An act
something
of
bigger than yourself.
spirituality.
Yeah,
That's exactly it.
it
Exactly.
is. It is. So when it comes to spirituality, it can feel like it's a hot button topic, but did I say that, or was it a hot topic button? Which is it? A hot button topic, hot topic
The
button?
world will never know.
No, there's no way to ever check it. There's no search
I
thing for that.
I got nothing.
I got nothing. Okay. Moving on. When it comes to spirituality, I think it's worth your time to just reflect on it. Whatever that means to you is perfect. So the
Right.
next one becomes the mental. And the mental is all about our thoughts, because our thoughts create our reality. If you think everybody is out to get you, you're going to have a very different experience when you then thinking everybody is out to help me. They're
Right.
You can be the exact same person with a different thought, and your world is radically different. So this is time for you to think, am I happy with the quality of my thoughts? Because the quality of your thoughts are going to create the quality of your life,
Yes.
ultimately. So can you give us some examples of the mental aspects of this?
Yeah. I mean, if you've never heard this before, because I remember my mind being blown when I first learned this, is that your thoughts create your feelings. And so all of the emotions, like we're talking about emotional in the beginning of this episode, all the feelings that you have, they come from a thought that you have, right? When we are thinking about our pet that passed away, we feel sad. When we are worried about our kids at school, we feel anxious, right? So whatever is in your mind is dominating how you're showing up in the world. And so a big part of 5-year you and coaching is to say, what about your thinking do you want to improve? What are some commonly held beliefs you have that might no longer serve you. This really applies the example that popped into my head, our money beliefs. Andrew and I have a background in personal finance, and a lot of people, let's say, have a belief that rich people are evil. And maybe it's because they had their dad yell at some guy in a Ferrari who was like cutting them off in traffic. And they said, "Oh, you rich jerk," or whatever these other dad expletives I can't say on the air, but And so over time, you sort of develop these belief systems and they become your reality. And so your brain is not going to want you to become something that's a threat. So if you think rich people are evil and you're wondering why you can't save more, why, someone else got the raise, it might be because you have this subconscious belief that if you get money or more money, that you will become a bad person. And so this is the part where we sort of go through and work with you on some thoughts that you might want to change. And we encourage you to sit and think and sort of challenge your preconceived notions about things and ask you, what do you want yourself to look like in 5 years? What are the thoughts that somebody who has these things or lives this life might have? And then with homework and practice, you can implement that and start having more of the thoughts that will lead you to become the person you actually want to be.
That's right. And when you're able to find out those thoughts, those self-limiting thoughts, those thoughts that really don't serve you anymore, but you didn't realize you were having them, that's really hard to do. And that's, again, how we're able to pull those things out just from casual conversation with anybody. I mean, we do it in our calls all the time, but I can talk with somebody for 5 minutes and I have a very good grasp of where they are at with their health, their fitness, their finances, their life, just by the words that they use, because those are the words that are running in their head all the time. And when we're able to pull out those things and go, you say you want to be wealthier, but let's answer a few questions here. Wealthy people they're terrible. Okay, well, you're not going to want to be terrible. So this is
Right.
a mental thing that's going to have to be worked on one step at a time over the coming weeks and months and possibly years. But the good news is once you realize that, you're able to change it. And I think that's what we always come back to is you need to have awareness. And sometimes that awareness will come from somebody else letting you know, and you hearing it and going, "Oh, shoot. Yeah. Kat's done that with me recently with like several things. It's like, you always do this, right?" And my jaw dropped and I'm like, "Do I?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm not going to use anything in specific, but like you'll point out something
I don't
to
know what
me.
you're talking about. Okay.
You've raised something in the last couple of weeks, which I don't want to share on this moment because I'm working on it. But
Okay,
like,
fair enough.
but it's like, it's one of those things where you hear it and you go, it hits you and you're like, "Oh yeah, I am doing that. I don't want to do that." So you actively start to change it. And we have processes and things that can help with that. But getting your mental game right is another foundational thing of yourself. And you need to know where you want to be with that.
Yeah, this is the category for limiting beliefs, right? So once we work with you through week 1 and we find out what you actually want to do, right? And so let's say that we are coaching a young woman who just became a mom for the first time, but she's always wanted to start her own business. And she found the two of us because we've been entrepreneurs for over a decade and we're both parents. And let's say she signed up for coaching because she wanted to work with us. And we find out that she's been in the same job for forever, but she's always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Well, this week 2, would be the time that we go through and figure out what are her thoughts around this. And through digging, and we try to get to the core, to the root of why haven't you started yet? And the belief could be that it will be hard for me to start a business while I have a full-time job and I just had a baby. Or it might be that starting a business is really expensive. Or it might be that I am not going to be a good mom if I decide to start a business right now. And so what we learn and what we've learned through working with people and doing this work on ourselves is that a lot of the beliefs we have come from society. They come from movies. They come from our families. They come from things that we soak up without realizing it. And if we're able to get to the root of where these beliefs come from, we can say, is this actually true? Are there examples of people who have done this, who have run businesses with young children and babies? me being one of them, right? And so we can work on those limiting beliefs. So that is the mental aspect. This is not like an intensive therapy, like beat up on people or anything like that. This is like, this is an encouraging and motivating thing. And people's minds are blown. They're like, wait, I don't actually know why I think that. I have no idea where that came from. Or then they realize, like, oh, maybe it's because, my mom always said this, or a teacher said this to me one time and it stuck with me.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing how these things impact our mental state and what we believe we can do.
It really is. And when you work with us, you get nothing but support. There is no blaming. If you choose to blame somebody in your past for what you chose to believe, that's one thing, but that doesn't really serve you in time. It's a process of just accepting, like, look, I had to believe that I couldn't start a business, so I would go get a job that would give me this thing and that thing. And then now I've got this family and now I want to do this. It's okay. It's forming the tapestry of your life. And that is a wonderful thing. I often say it's only when we look back can we see the steps that we took and the reasons why we took them that led us to the moment we're in. And you're not going to know those moments when you're standing in them, just like you aren't going to 5 years from now when you look back and you go, I listened to this coaching call, then I reached out and I wasn't sure, but then this happened. And now I am way further on than I ever have been because I took these little steps. That's how life unfolds. So when you're in the mom's case of wanting to start a business, we help with those limiting beliefs and then we help unpack them. And then we start taking small steps that you feel comfortable taking and maybe a little uncomfortable taking too, because it is growth. And like, let's face it, if it was all comfortable, you wouldn't be growing. And that's kind of the trade-off, but we make it so small that it doesn't feel like, you're having to quit your job and move into a trailer and do all these things. It's just like, it's just, register a domain in this case, or, pick a name, all these good things.
Love it.
So the last one is the one I think that people are able to kind of visualize often. It's physical. And I always love this one. I used to own a gym. I've always been really big on, the physical aspects of life. And it's only when we started doing these foundational things that everything changed for me, because my attitude towards everything shifted when I started thinking of my 5-year self. But before we get into that, Kat, can you kind of explain what the physical is?
Yeah. Well, like you said, I think this one's easier to grasp because the other ones can be a little bit abstract, or they're really very from person to person. But to ask somebody, what do you want to look like 5 years from now? How do you want your body to feel? How do you want your health to look in 5 years? Everybody's got an answer for that, right? Because we spend a lot of our time, thinking about these things or beating ourselves up for not looking the way that we want to look. So Andrew and I have gone through a health journey and a physical transformation, which is why we are able to help people with this. We are not big on diets or fads or anything like that. We have a little bit at a time transformed our habits, and we have turned healthy living into a lifestyle that we are still working on. And so this one is so important because your physical health directly impacts your mental health. If you don't feel good, if you're sick, your mental health suffers. And if your thoughts are suffering, your emotions are suffering. And it's just a cyclical pattern, and it's not good. And it doesn't help you to feel the way you want to feel. So this is an important one. And it's not really about being like vain or like, oh, I hope I have a six pack, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But this is more about saying, I care about my health. How do I want to take care of myself? Because if I take care of myself physically, the rest follows.
Exactly. So when we're talking about the physical stuff, a little more granular, what we will do is we'll get you to think of how you want to be in 5 years. And sometimes it'll be, like I want a six pack. Other people will be, I want to be able to run a 5K or a marathon or whatever it is. All those things are good. There is more to that than just like, those are goals. They're not results. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what we'll do is, and I'm just going to use us, Kat, if you're okay with that.
Go for it.
Okay. So Kat and I started at the beginning of last year, and we were not happy with our physical self. So we're like, okay, you know what? We're just going to focus on the physical aspect, the health aspect of this. I lost 30 pounds over this past year by simply doing very small things one at a time. I did a lot of learning and a lot of trial and error. And I know, Kat, we did the same because we were trying things alongside of each other, and we had to accept, like, look, what works for me may not work for you and vice versa. Totally acceptable. But as we were working on these things together, we were able to discover some really key foundational things, like we weren't drinking enough water. We weren't getting enough sleep. And guess what? If those two things aren't in your life on a daily basis, you're going to have a hard time doing anything. Cranky, tired, stiff, foggy headed. And then we started working on other things. We had joint pain. So we looked at like what was causing inflammation for us. For other people, it'll be different. We looked at different nutritional aspects, which I don't want to get into because I don't want people going, oh, this is the thing I need to do to get to where I want to be. But it is safe to say that us of this time last year, as of recording this, wouldn't recognize us today. We've lost over 50 pounds collectively.
Combined,
We have better sleep, we have better skin, we have better attitudes, and it's all because we took it one step at a time. We didn't set out to change everything at once because we knew that was going to fail. So we thought our 5-year self is happy, they're physically active, they enjoy what they see when they look in the mirror. These are all parts of that. And we started to take those steps.
Yep, exactly. And a big part of all of this, all 4 of these categories, is to get to know your future self and to start making decisions as though you are that person. And to start asking yourself, would future me eat this? Would future me think this? Would future me know how to cope with this big feeling? Right. And so it's just as like at nighttime when I don't want to do the dishes, I'm like, oh man, the Catherine of tomorrow morning is going to really like me if I do these dishes. Like she is going to be so grateful when she walks and there's a clean coffee cup for her. I think that way all the time, it has dramatically affected everything. And this, big part of it with food too, especially once we recognize what triggers us, which is a slightly different for each one of us. What type of food makes us feel bad? What types of food makes us mentally hurt the next day? What type of food like makes us a little itchy, makes our stomachs hurt? Whatever it is, we figured all of that out over a period of 12 months. It's always a work in progress, right? But now I know if I take a bite of my kid's pizza, future Catherine is not going to feel good. And so I am constantly making decisions to honor my future self. And it's a process, but it's one that we teach during our coaching.
Exactly. And as you're learning this and as you're moving forward with your health, Kat and I were working on something this past week and we came up with a whole bunch of health goals. And we're like, okay, well, if you want to have, let's just take the 6-pack because, that's the easy visual one for everyone. Well, then you have to you have to prioritize the goals. And saying you want a 6-pack is a great goal, but that's it's a one-day thing, and then you're going to have it, but you're going to gradually move into it.
Right.
So we're like, we came up with all these steps that you need to do before that, and it was really simple stuff like you need to start being properly hydrated. You need to eliminate these certain types of foods that don't probably serve this goal. You need to move more. You need to do these different things. None of it is really ever big. And you're the one who gets to decide these are the steps that I want to take moving towards the goal that is the right goal for me.
So I think that we've covered all 4 parts of the self that we will go over in week 2 of coaching. Of course, if you work with us one-on-one or the 2 of us to one, it's just like Shark Tank. You get 2 sharks with this deal. Except we're not sharks. We're like,
kindest people ever
nice.
meet.
Yeah, nice bear, like cuddly bears. Anyways, this analogy is failing almost as badly as yours do. But
thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. But this was meant to get a glimpse of what it might be like working with us and how we might be able to help you. Of course, each person it'll be tailored to them. But yeah, that's week 2.
Yeah. So next week, we're going to be covering social, and that's all about the people in your life. So once you know your soul and yourself, then you can show up in the world for everybody else in a way that's authentic. And when that happens, you start attracting the right people. And we'll get into all of that next week. Until then, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kat. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Hey guys, quick disclaimer. We're podcasters on the internet. If you need to seek professional help, please go see your healthcare professional.